There is a truth we often forget amidst the clamor of our busy lives. When we keep our focus on God, solutions that once seemed impossible begin to reveal themselves. We live in a world that demands answers, quick fixes, and immediate results. Our minds race from one problem to the next, constantly seeking a way out, a solution to ease our burdens. And yet, despite our efforts, we often find ourselves overwhelmed by the weight of it all. In the journey of life, one of the greatest challenges we face is the constant flood of distractions that seeks to pull our attention in countless directions. We are inundated daily with demands, work, relationships, responsibilities, and the endless noise of the world around us. In the midst of all this, it becomes increasingly difficult to maintain focus on what truly matters. The solution to our struggles and uncertainties is often not found in chasing after every distraction or responding to every immediate demand. Instead, the solution lies in a simple yet profound truth. When we fix our eyes on God, when we direct our attention to Him and His ways, we begin to see our challenges in a new light. Solutions emerge, not because we've figured everything out, but because we've chosen to stop looking everywhere else and start looking toward Him. The world around us constantly invites us to look away from God. It suggests that the answers to our deepest needs can be found in our own strength, in the accumulation of wealth, in the approval of others, or in the pursuit of fleeting pleasures. These distractions promise fulfillment but never deliver. They leave us empty, perpetually searching for more, always needing just a little more to feel satisfied. We find ourselves caught in a cycle of busyness, running from one task to the next, trying to solve problems with our own limited resources, and yet the problems continue to multiply. We work harder, push further, and still find ourselves at the end of the day feeling unsatisfied and overwhelmed. But in the midst of this chaos, there is another way, the way of stillness, of focus, of deliberately choosing to place our attention on something far beyond our circumstances. When we keep our focus on God, we are reminded of His sovereignty, His wisdom, and His love. We realize that we do not have to navigate this world alone, struggling to find our own way through the wilderness. We are not expected to solve every problem on our own, or to carry every burden by ourselves. By choosing to focus on God, we enter into a relationship with the Creator who has all the answers, who sees the end from the beginning, and who, in His perfect timing, will reveal the solutions we so desperately seek. The first step in this journey of focused trust is recognizing the futility of trying to solve everything on our own. The world constantly tells us that the solution to every problem is within our grasp, if only we try hard enough, work longer hours, or sharpen our skills. While diligence and hard work are important, they are not the ultimate answer. Our human efforts, though valuable, are limited. We are finite beings, bound by time and space, unable to see the full picture or predict the future. It is easy to become overwhelmed by the enormity of our challenges. It is often in moments of greatest struggle, when we feel most lost or confused, that we are called to shift our focus. In these moments, we must deliberately choose to look beyond the noise of the world and turn our gaze toward God. This is not always easy. In fact, it requires a conscious act of will, a decision to stop reacting to the pressure of the moment and instead seek out the stillness that allows us to hear the voice of God. It may feel like a small act, but it is powerful. One of the most profound effects of focusing on God is that it shifts our perspective. When we are overwhelmed by the problems in front of us, it can feel as though they are insurmountable. The weight of our challenges can cloud our vision, making it difficult to see any way forward. We become fixated on the problem, consumed by it, and begin to feel trapped by it. But when we turn our eyes to God, we begin to see our problems through a different lens. We remember that He is bigger than any obstacle, that His power is greater than any challenge. Suddenly, the things that seemed impossible begin to look different. The road ahead may still be difficult, but we can now see a way forward, because we know that we are not walking alone. It's easy to become consumed by the difficulties we face, but when we fix our gaze on God, we are reminded of the bigger picture. We remember that the troubles of this world are temporary, but our relationship with God is eternal. This perspective allows us to let go of the panic and frustration that often accompanies life's struggles. It helps us to relinquish the need to control every outcome, to micromanage every detail, and to surrender to the divine wisdom that transcends our understanding. Focusing on God allows us to take a step back and breathe, knowing that He has already gone before us and that He is with us every step of the way. Another powerful aspect of keeping our focus on God is that it draws us closer to Him. The more we focus on Him, the more we learn to trust Him. And trust, ultimately, is the foundation upon which all solutions are built. The act of focusing on God is not just about seeking answers to our immediate problems. It is about cultivating a deeper relationship with Him, one that is rooted in trust. When we trust God, we allow Him to lead us, to guide us, and to reveal His solutions in His time and His way. This trust is not blind or passive. It is an active choice to surrender our need for control and to rest in the assurance that God knows what is best for us. As we focus on God, we begin to understand that the process of finding solutions is not always about quick fixes or immediate answers. God's solutions often come in ways that we do not expect. Sometimes the solution is not the removal of the problem, but the strength to endure it. Sometimes the solution is not a dramatic shift in circumstances, but a transformation within us, a change in perspective, a growth in character, or a deepening of faith. By keeping our focus on God, we open ourselves up to receive the solutions He has prepared for us, whether they come in the form of answered prayers, new opportunities, or unexpected blessings. In keeping our focus on God, we also learn the value of patience. Solutions rarely come on our timeline. The world tells us that we should have everything now, that we should be able to solve our problems instantly. But God's timing is not the same as ours. He knows the right moment for every answer, the right time for every blessing. By focusing on Him, we learn to wait with anticipation, trusting that His timing is perfect, even when it doesn't align with our own desires. Patience, when paired with trust, becomes a powerful force. It transforms our perspective on the challenges we face and helps us to remain steady even in the most uncertain times. The choice to keep our focus on God is not a one-time decision, but a daily commitment. Each day we must choose to turn our gaze away from the distractions that pull us in every direction and fix our eyes on the One who holds all the answers. It is in this focus that we find peace, clarity, and direction. It is in this focus that we find the solutions we seek. In a world that moves faster and faster, where the demands of life never seem to let up, it is easy to feel as though the solutions to our problems lie only in what we can immediately see or grasp. We often look to our own understanding, our limited perspective, and try to make sense of our difficulties through sheer willpower or human ingenuity. Yet, despite all our efforts, we find that the solutions we desperately seek remain elusive, slipping through our fingers just when we think we've found them. When we turn our focus toward God, we open ourselves to the kind of provision that transcends our understanding. This is a provision that does not rely on human effort, nor does it conform to our limited vision of what we believe we need. It is a provision that flows from the divine wisdom of God, who sees the whole picture, past, present, and future, and knows exactly what we need in every moment. When we trust in Him and focus on His promises, we step into a realm where His provision is not only real, but assured. The concept of trusting in God's provision is not just about having our material needs met, although that is certainly part of it. It is about trusting that God, in His infinite wisdom, knows what we truly need and that He will provide it at the right time and in the right way. Too often we are consumed by what we think we need in the moment, whether it's money, validation, success, or some other tangible outcome. We can become fixated on these desires, believing that they are the key to solving our problems. But when we place our focus on God, we are reminded that the answers are not always found in what we can see or touch. Sometimes the provision we need is something far deeper, a sense of peace in the midst of chaos, a clearer vision of the path ahead, or the strength to persevere through hardship. It is essential to recognize that God's provision does not always align with our timing or expectations. Our impatience often causes us to question His methods. We want answers now, solutions to appear instantly, but God's wisdom is not confined to our sense of urgency. His provision comes at just the right moment, not when we demand it, but when we are ready to receive it. This is where trust becomes so crucial. We must trust that God sees beyond our immediate need and that He is orchestrating circumstances for our ultimate good, even when the answers don't come on our timetable. In moments of struggle, when the weight of life's challenges threatens to overwhelm us, it is easy to lose sight of the fact that God is already working behind the scenes, preparing solutions that are far beyond what we could have imagined. The provision that He offers is often hidden from our view, and it requires faith to believe that it will come. It may not look the way we thought it would, but it will always be exactly what we need. When we focus on God and trust in His provision, we begin to understand that our role is not to control every detail, but to remain open, patient, and receptive to what He is doing. Trusting in God's provision also frees us from the anxiety that comes from trying to control everything. We live in a culture that often values self-sufficiency and independence, pushing us to believe that we must do everything on our own in order to succeed. But in truth, true strength comes from surrendering our need for control and recognizing that God is the one who provides all that we need. This surrender does not mean passivity. It means recognizing that there are things beyond our ability to handle, and that we are not called to carry the burden of the world alone. God's provision comes to us in ways that we cannot foresee, and it is through this trust in His timing and methods that we experience the peace that surpasses all understanding. When we choose to focus on God's provision, we learn to lean into His faithfulness. We remember the many times in the past when He has already provided for us, when He has carried us through challenges that once seemed insurmountable. This trust builds resilience in us. It enables us to face the unknowns of life with a confident assurance that we are never without help, never without the resources we truly need. It is in focusing on God and trusting in His provision that we are able to step away from the frantic striving that often consumes us. We no longer have to chase after the fleeting solutions the world offers. Instead, we can rest in the certainty that God will always provide in His time and in His way exactly what we need to move forward. In doing so, we find peace, clarity, and strength. Things the world cannot offer, but that are always available when we choose to trust in God's provision. Patience, when placed within the context of faith, becomes a powerful tool in navigating the complexities and struggles of life. In our fast-paced world, patience is often seen as a passive trait, something that requires simply waiting without action or resolution. Yet, in the realm of trusting God, patience takes on a far deeper, more active role. It is not merely about biding time, but about trusting that God's timing, wisdom, and provision will unfold in ways that are ultimately best for us, even if it takes longer than we would prefer or expect. Patience in the divine context requires us to shift our focus away from our immediate desires and place our trust in the broader, eternal perspective that God sees. Our culture teaches us to expect instant results, to desire immediate gratification, and to solve problems quickly. This mindset can lead us to believe that anything worth having should be obtained without delay, whether it is success, relationships, or answers to life's pressing questions. We often expect things to unfold according to our own timetable. When things don't go as we expect, or when problems persist without resolution, we begin to feel frustrated, anxious, and disillusioned. This impatience stems from the belief that we are in control, that we should be able to manage every aspect of our lives according to our own schedules and desires. Yet when we focus on God and place our trust in His will, we begin to understand that the waiting process itself has profound value. It is in the waiting that God refines us, builds our character, and teaches us lessons that would be impossible to learn if everything happened on our timetable. It is easy to think of patience as something we are forced into when we have no other choice, but in the context of faith, patience is a choice to trust in the unseen hand of God, even when the solution is not immediately visible. This trust doesn't mean we simply wait idly for something to happen. Rather, it means we actively choose to trust in God's plan, acknowledging that He is working behind the scenes, even when we cannot see it. We let go of the need for control and surrender ourselves to His wisdom, knowing that His timing is always perfect, even when it doesn't align with our own. The true nature of patience, in this sense, is not passive resignation, but an active waiting that is grounded in hope. It is a form of spiritual endurance, a resilience that comes from knowing that God is in control. Patience requires us to take our eyes off the immediate frustrations and challenges and lift them up toward God, the one who sees all things clearly and knows what is best for us in every situation. It is during this time of waiting that our faith grows. We learn to depend less on our own understanding and more on God's guidance. We learn to lean into His presence and trust that He is with us every step of the way, even when the road ahead seems unclear. Patience also teaches us the value of endurance. In a world that often promotes quick fixes and instant solutions, we can easily forget that some of life's most important lessons are learned through perseverance. Many of the challenges we face in life are not meant to be solved quickly or without effort. God uses these moments of waiting to build endurance in us, strengthening our ability to withstand life's trials and to face them with grace. In this process, we develop a kind of spiritual stamina that allows us to endure the difficulties of life without losing hope or faith. Patience, therefore, is not just about waiting for something to change. It is about changing within ourselves as we wait. This transformation is especially evident when we face trials that seem insurmountable. During such times, it is easy to feel as though we are stuck, as if progress is impossible, and that no answer is forthcoming. Yet if we remain patient, focusing on God's promises and trusting in His ability to work in ways we cannot comprehend, we begin to see things differently. The waiting period becomes a time of growth, not only in our character but also in our relationship with God. We learn to trust Him more deeply, to lean on Him more fully, and to rely on His timing rather than our own. In this way, patience allows us to deepen our faith and build a stronger foundation upon which we can stand when the storms of life come. God's timing is rarely predictable, and His ways are often mysterious. The answers we seek might not come when we expect them, or in the form that we envision, but that does not mean they will not come. Patience allows us to trust that God's plan is greater than our own. It reminds us that His perspective is infinite, and that He knows the best course for our lives, even when we are unable to see it ourselves. It is easy to grow disheartened when our prayers seem unanswered, or when the difficulties we face persist without resolution. Yet, when we wait patiently on God, we discover that His answers are always the best ones. They might not always align with our immediate desires, but they will always be what is needed to bring about our highest good. Patience also teaches us to look beyond the immediate circumstances and to trust that God's work in our lives is not confined to the present moment. Our struggles and challenges are part of a much larger story that God is unfolding, and we are only able to see a small part of it. This perspective helps us to approach waiting not as a burden, but as a necessary part of our spiritual growth. In learning to wait on God, we also learn to trust that every moment has purpose, and that nothing is wasted in His plan. Even when we cannot understand the reason for our trials or the delay in our prayers being answered, we can trust that God is using these moments to prepare us for something greater. Patience also brings peace. In our impatience, we often create unnecessary anxiety, worrying about outcomes that are not yet determined and trying to control situations that are beyond our control. This constant striving only adds to our stress and frustration. But when we embrace patience, we allow ourselves to rest in God's peace, knowing that He has it all under control. This peace is not the absence of challenges, but the assurance that we are not facing them alone. God's presence in our lives offers a calm that transcends our circumstances, allowing us to face difficulties with a quiet strength that comes from knowing we are in His hands. The act of waiting patiently does not mean that we are passive or inactive. It does not mean that we cease to act or make decisions in our lives. Instead, patience teaches us to act with wisdom and discernment, guided by God's timing rather than our own impulses. It teaches us to be present in the moment, to trust that each step we take is part of a larger journey that is unfolding in God's perfect time. Patience is an invitation to trust, to lean in, and to wait with expectation, knowing that the answers will come at the right moment and in the right way. When we embrace the gift of patience, we are not merely waiting for something to happen. We are being transformed in the process. Our faith is refined, our character is strengthened, and our trust in God deepens. In the end, patience is not about delaying what we want, but about opening ourselves up to God's perfect plan, trusting that what He has for us is better than anything we could have imagined for ourselves. Through patience, we learn to wait, not with frustration, but with hope, knowing that in God's timing, everything will fall into place as it should. It's easy to become fixated on our problems. The challenges of life, the struggles we face, often feel like towering obstacles, blocking our view of everything else. When we are deep in the midst of hardship, it can seem as though there is nothing but darkness ahead. The weight of our circumstances presses in on us, making it hard to see past the immediate difficulties. Yet, when we choose to focus on God, when we direct our attention toward Him rather than the problem itself, something remarkable happens. This shift in perspective doesn't necessarily mean that the problems disappear. It doesn't mean that the struggles become easy or that they are instantly resolved. What it means is that, in focusing on God, we gain a new way of looking at the obstacles in front of us. We begin to see beyond the immediate issue and understand that the struggle we face is part of a larger plan, one that God is unfolding in His perfect timing. We start to realize that the challenges, rather than being roadblocks, are opportunities for growth, learning, and deeper trust in Him. When we focus on God, we are reminded of His power, His sovereignty, and His ability to bring about transformation in ways we cannot comprehend. Our problems, while real and painful, are not beyond His reach. He is not limited by the size of our struggles or by the complexity of our circumstances. By lifting our eyes to Him, we begin to see that what we face is small in comparison to His greatness. The perspective change doesn't deny the reality of our difficulties. Rather, it helps us put them into their rightful context. When we understand that God is greater than any obstacle, that He is working behind the scenes, we are filled with a sense of peace that transcends the problem itself. The power of perspective lies in its ability to transform how we respond to life's challenges. When we are consumed by the problem, we often react in ways that are driven by fear, anxiety, or frustration. We feel as though we are fighting a battle on our own, and we act from a place of limitation, unsure of how to proceed. But when we shift our focus toward God, our responses change. We move from a place of fear to a place of trust, from confusion to clarity. We realize that we do not have to face the challenge alone, and that we do not have to have all the answers right away. As we continue to focus on Him, we are reminded of His faithfulness in the past. We can look back on times when He has already seen us through difficult situations, and this reminder strengthens our faith for the present moment. We can trust that if God has been faithful in the past, He will be faithful in the future as well. In those moments when we feel uncertain, focusing on God helps us recall His promises and trust in His character. We are reminded that He is a provider, a protector, and a guide, and that He is with us in every circumstance. When we focus on God, we also gain the ability to see beyond the immediate and recognize that our struggles are not the end of the story. They are simply a chapter in the ongoing narrative of our lives, a narrative that is shaped and directed by God. We understand that the challenges we face are temporary, and that the resolution is already written in God's plan. Even if we cannot see it now, we trust that the end result will be for our good, and that God will work all things together for His glory and our benefit. This shift in perspective gives us the strength to endure, knowing that there is a greater purpose at work, even when we cannot yet see it clearly. Focusing on God allows us to see the opportunities within the struggles. Every challenge is an invitation to grow, to trust more deeply, and to learn more about who we are and who God is. In the midst of hardship, we are refined and shaped into the people God intends us to be. The struggle itself becomes a stepping stone, not a roadblock. When we focus on God, we begin to see that these struggles are not meaningless or pointless. They are part of the process of becoming the person God has called us to be. When we focus on God, our eyes are opened to the bigger picture. We are able to see beyond the immediate issue and recognize that our lives are part of a much larger story, a story that involves not just our own journey, but the journeys of those around us and the unfolding of God's eternal plan. This perspective helps us keep our struggles in proper context. We realize that we are not alone, that God is not only with us, but is also working in the lives of others. Our challenges become a shared experience, part of the larger narrative of faith and growth. The shift in perspective that comes from focusing on God transforms not just our view of our problems, but our approach to life itself. We stop being driven by fear and start being guided by faith. We stop reacting to circumstances and begin responding to God's guidance. We stop seeing obstacles as insurmountable and start recognizing them as opportunities to trust, to grow, and to witness God's power at work in our lives.